There are many mysterious things about Mars, and we are going to discuss about it. Here with Brian Cox's lectures we can know about Mars. Mars is known as the red planet. Fourth in the solar system, very little sun rays reach there. Thus, the planet is colder than Earth. Mars's surface is full of dust and is like desert, but underneath it is said that there have been quantities of water. But can we colonize Mars? Can we terraform it? These questions will be answered by Professor Brian Cox.
So the answer is that no technological advances are required for us to go and colonize Mars, to visit Mars first and then colonize it. We have the technology now. Mars it's actually the only planet other than the Earth that we will ever colonize, I think it's fair to say. If you think about it, Mercury is too hot, Venus is really too hot, and the rest of them are made of gas. So perhaps the moons around the other planets we could. So Mars is the only planet we'll colonize beyond Earth, but it's an easy planet to colonize. It's got water in abundance below the surface, we're sure, or frozen in the ice caps. It's got all the minerals that we need to build a civilization.
We can colonize it, but is terraforming a hard thing to do? Let's hear about it.
So terraforming is changing the atmosphere of the planet, and that's a longer term goal, but we can. We know that we could do it in principle. Ultimately, you'd want to grow plants on the surface when you made it hot enough. I should say that there's a place called Hellas Basin on Mars, which is a big, almost certainly an impact crater. It's impact basin actually, and it's so deep that if you stand on the edge of the rim of the Hellas Basin, it's 9 kilometers down to the floor. So that means that although it's so big you couldn't see it, if you put Everest in the middle, you could look down on the summit from the edge. You couldn't actually, because the summit would be over the horizon, because it's such a big thing. It's quite a big part of the planet. But it's so deep that the atmospheric pressure is so high at the floor of the crater that liquid water can occasionally exist at the...
Okay, those steps are kind of easy. Then let's talk about the history of Mars. Mars has been around for 4.5 billion years. Throughout the years many things occurred in Mars.
Oceans and rivers have been there, but what happened to it now? Are we likely to discover it?
Because we know something about the history of Mars now, quite a lot about the history of Mars. And it's certainly clear that there was water, almost certainly oceans, rivers. And that water is almost certainly still there. So I would say certainly still there.
Well, they have found large quantities of ice now, right?
Yeah, so there's certainly ice. There may even be pockets of liquid water below the surface somewhere. So couple that with all the minerals and the resources that we know are there, and you have everything you need. So that's the thing about Mars. It's quite nice relative to everywhere else other than the Earth. You can't go to Venus, right? You just melt. It's, 400 and something degrees and 90 atmospheric pressure.
Yeah.
So Mars is quite nice.
Getting Mars's history is far more simple, but Earth's is not, and why is that?
The interesting thing about Mars is that if life began on Mars, it probably began around the same time that it began on Earth, so 3.5 to 4 billion years ago. But on Earth, sort of kind of paradoxically, it's much harder to look back in time because Earth's active. It's got weather, it's got volcanoes, plate tectonics, all this stuff. So the surface is constantly being renewed. And so it's very, very hard to get samples from Earth of Earth as it was 3.5 to 4 billion years ago. It's almost impossible. Whereas on Mars, it stopped being geologically active about 3.5 billion years ago. So it's been in deep freeze.
Now you know about the history of Mars. The mission to Mars is quite difficult, and how it works is far more difficult. Let's hear how that works.
The most amazing thing about that mission is that Perseverance, the rover, is the first bit. So it's packaging up samples and it's going to leave them on the surface of Mars. And then the next thing, another mission is going to go and land another lander on Mars, which is going to go and collect the samples, put them in a rocket. And the rocket is going to be, believe it or not, catapulted up off the surface, and then they're going to light the rocket and it's going to fly into orbit around Mars. And then they're going to send another mission which is going to go and find this thing which has got the samples in it, which is only about the size of a baseball. And then it's going to find it in orbit around Mars, get it, and then bring it back to Earth. And ultimately it's going to crash land in Utah in the desert, and then they're going to go and find that and bring it back to the laboratory to look for signs of life on Mars.
These are the little or much things about Mars that you should know. In the future, maybe 10 years later, we, humans, will be able to go there. For more videos, subscribe.